Good morning. We are all gathered here today on the traditional territories of the signatories to Treaty 7, and I'd also like to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a very deep connection with this land. I'm here today with James McKay and Devin Lagan, both students at the U of C. All Albertans are struggling with the cost of living. The price of everything has soared over the past year as inflation touches levels that we haven't seen in 2 generations. Now, Danielle Smith and the UCP have made that struggle even harder. They have spurred chaos in Alberta households with incompetent decisions like removing price caps on necessities like heat and light and car insurance, and then watching those costs skyrocketing while they stand by. For post-secondary students, the UCP has piled on even more costs and chaos by massively hiking tuition costs and charging extra interest on student debt, above the prime rate, which is already climbing steadily. Now, under the UCP, Alberta has the fastest rising tuition in Canada, and the government even managed to underspend the student aid budget at the same time. This government is literally creating new barriers for young Albertans to build a career, and to anyone, quite frankly, who wants to go back to school and provide a better life for themselves or their family. So that's why it is even more important that we are here today to talk about the UCP's chaotic, incompetent inflation plan. Specifically, in the face of all the costs I've just outlined, it is wrong that Devin and James are among the 2 million Albertans who will get nothing from the portal that was launched this morning. Post-secondary students are simply not eligible for the $100 payments that Albertans have started applying for this morning. It's just not right. It is time for a government that cares, and one that understands the challenges that Alberta students are facing, and quite frankly, what so many Albertans are facing for that matter. We need a real and competent long-term plan to address the affordability crisis. And that's why Alberta's NDP has committed to reinstating a tuition cap. We've called for an immediate freeze on auto insurance rates while we assess how to get the cost down. And we are looking actively at how to lower the cost of utilities, and we've called repeatedly for an investigation into the skyrocketing price of groceries. And we're just getting started. Albertans need to know that there is a stable and competent government in their corner as they confront a cost of living crisis that has not been seen in many people's lifetimes. Now, to speak to their experiences, I'd like to introduce U of C students James McKay and Devin Langdon. James.
Thank you. Hi, my name is James. I'm a 4th-year student at the University of Calgary, studying political science and history. In the present day, post-secondary education is a necessity when trying to progress in one's career. Young people should not have to be burdened with thousands of dollars of debt for just trying to get ahead in life. Making sure education at every level is affordable and easy to access is crucial for building a more robust and strong economy here in Alberta for generations to come. This is one of the reasons I am studying political science. I grew up in Cape Breton, where my parents were pretty politically engaged and taught me the value of politics and our democratic process. They taught me from a young age that working with your community to make it better is really important. I'm lucky to be really close with my family. And when I grew up to visit them in Fort Mac, they asked about me and my classmates, how we are doing. They like to joke with me that it's us young people who are going to have to make the changes we want to see in society, and education is important to do that. That is why I am so concerned about the current affordability crisis. I'm pretty fortunate though, my tuition has gone up a lot. I do get by. Unfortunately, a lot of my friends have to take up a lot of debt. Tuition has gone up. They are concerned that they won't be able to finish their degree at all, simply because they cannot afford it, alongside renting an apartment, driving a vehicle, and putting food on their table. The fact that so many of us don't qualify for affordability payments that could at least do something just make that harder. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Devin. I'm also a fourth-year political science student. I'm glad to be here as a student at the University of Calgary. I love this city, and I really want to stay in Alberta after high school. I really wanted to stay in Alberta after high school. But the whole university thing is a lot more expensive than it used to, even when I started. As a student, I work really hard at making it work, but everything is just getting harder to pay for. I budget really carefully. Over the last couple of years, I've cut a lot of my costs, most of them. My rent has gone up, my bills have gone up, money just doesn't go as far as it used to. It's just harder to pay for everything. I've been trying to look for more room in my spending for savings, but the budget is already pretty thin. Cutting back on what I'm spending on groceries is the last thing I really have room on. Not only switching from fresh vegetables to frozen, but now even cutting back on frozen foods because it's too expensive. And also only buying things when they're on sale is very helpful for me right now. I've even had to sell my car in the last year because auto insurance rates are insane and I can't afford gas anyways. Like many, I've thought of turning to my family for help, but I worry about their finances too. I haven't been able to get as much help from them due to their own experience with the cost of living rising. Affordability measures could help people, but the UCP just don't get it. They are cutting off students who are the future of this province. I just don't understand why someone in my situation won't be eligible for any inflation relief payments.
Thank you both very much for coming here today and sharing your stories with us. We've heard from so many Albertans who are struggling. I sincerely hope that this government's portal works properly today and that those Albertans who are eligible for that $100 will be able to get it quickly. But even if it does work perfectly, the UCP's chaotic plan excludes millions of Albertans, while the UCP at the same time refuses to take action on the things that are driving up household costs of many of those excluded Albertans that the UCP could control if they wanted. An Alberta NDP will be caring, competent, and focused on containing those costs and keeping more money in Albertans' pockets. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions folks may have.
Okay, so questions in person, then move to the lines.
Thank you. Kelly Kreiderman, Globe and Mail, and I'm sorry, my question is off topic, but we will be writing a lot of stories about inflation this year, and certainly your stories will be kept in mind for sure. I wanted to ask you about the just transition legislation we know is coming from the federal government this year. You told Don Braid yesterday you don't like it, you want it scrapped or reviewed. Can you tell us why?
Well, the bottom line is, you know, I was quite struck yesterday to see the Premier sort of lighting her hair on fire over a document which, quite frankly, she should have been aware of and known existed. Now, so there's two things that are troubling me. First of all, we have a document that, by its own admission, is talking about making changes that will have significant disruption to a sector that employs hundreds of thousands of people, the majority of whom are in Alberta. So we have that happening on one hand. And then we have a Premier who is leading a government that has been in complete and utter chaos for months, if not years, and that has really failed to demonstrate any level of competence. And it's not appropriate, in my mind, that this conversation is happening in Ottawa, in the House of Commons, without Albertans being fully engaged in that conversation. And clearly they have not been. There's a scope to the work that is being contemplated that is broad-ranging, that has not been part of a really rigorous conversation with Albertans. And it is very clear to me that the provincial government is asleep at the wheel and has not been doing its job. They, again, as I say, just jaw-dropping levels of incompetence. So because of that, it's just not appropriate to me that here we are 3 months away from an election in the province, and our fate is being deliberated in Ottawa without any of that kind of engagement, which should be preceding any kinds of efforts that would be contemplated as evidenced by those documents.
And just to be clear, the provincial politics aside, do you have a concern about the just transition legislation itself? From what you know from
yeah,
the
well, so
government?
part of the problem is that I don't know enough about it, which is wrong. I'm a citizen of Alberta, and clearly the expectation is that this has a disproportionate impact on the people of Alberta. And I should not know what's in it. The Premier, to be clear, should not know what's in it. And so I have a real concern that that's the point at which we are at. So both the federal and the provincial government are to blame for this state of affairs. And, you know, the federal government should not be carrying on its own with respect to this, and the provincial government shouldn't be as so deeply incompetent and disconnected as they clearly are on this. So let me also, though, say, Kelly, that I have said all along what I believe to be true, that you cannot pitch action on climate change and action to reduce emissions against economic growth. If you do that, you will fail on both. I believe there is a path available to us as Albertans and as Canadians to significantly reduce our emissions, to even ultimately find a cap which is practical, and to do so in a way that actually creates economic opportunity and protects and grows good long-term industrial blue-collar jobs for Albertans and for Canadians. So I believe there is a plan out there that exists that can achieve those goals. But what I also know now is that this provincial government, so lost in chaos as it has been for so long, has not delivered or displayed the competence to find that path. And so we should not be bowling ahead on this without a much more thoughtful and robust engagement by all Albertans, let alone the government of Alberta.
Most people don't need a microphone to hear me. Rick Bell, Calgary Sun. One question is going to be about what the feds are saying, and one question is going to be about what Smith is saying, including about you. So it's kind of a two-parter on the Smith one. Indulge me, because your answer will be probably short in the first part. She is claiming all you want to do is defer the just transition until after the election. She takes the quote that you had in the article today where you said you'd like to put the brakes on, you'd like to put it off. Mm-hmm. And she claims that means that you actually want to sort of bring it back if you become premier. So that's part A. And part B is, again, her claim that you should go to the federal NDP leader, Mr. Singh, and pressure him to take the just transition plan out of the deal he made with the federal Liberals. So that's the Smith question.
Right. So my answer is simply this. The plan as it exists now has clearly been constructed. Again, I don't know what's in it. It's been constructed without the government of Alberta there at the table, speaking up on behalf of Alberta workers, Alberta job creators, Alberta investors. And as a result, the plan cannot go ahead in its current state. And so I'm not talking about just putting it off. I'm saying we have a fundamental flaw in how we've gotten to this point, a flaw primarily driven by one of the most chaotic, incompetent provincial governments that we have seen in the history of this country over many, many decades. So that is my first point. In terms of the second point, I've been very clear to everybody, Jagmeet Singh, Justin Trudeau, all the MPs, quite frankly, in Ottawa, that the specter of Ottawa MPs debating a plan that by now, their own admission that we've seen through these documents, will have a disproportionate disruption to a sector that includes hundreds of thousands of workers primarily residing in Alberta. This prospect of them debating that in Ottawa right now, while we're in the midst of what is almost an election campaign, I mean, we're in the red zone and we're very close to that, to being in an official campaign, without us at the table, is just not acceptable. It's not how you run the country. So I've been very clear. I've already given that message to everyone in Ottawa, including Jagmeet Singh.
And my second question is, what would you do if you were premier today and the circumstances would be as they are today, as you've described? So you have,
Well, let me be
what would you
perfectly
do?
clear.
What would be your plan right now?
If I was premier today, Rick, under no circumstances would we be in this ridiculous position. Under no circumstances would we have displayed the level of incompetence that we see from this UCP government. I would know what's in that legislation. I would ensure that that legislation made things better for Albertans, created more jobs for Albertans, created more opportunities for Alberta workers, brought more investment to Alberta, because it would be something that we had achieved by standing up for Alberta and doing the job we've been elected to do. It is a damning indictment of this premier and this government that she only discovered this document and the scope of this work as a result of a Freedom of Information request done by an Ottawa reporters. If I was in government, under no circumstances would we be this clueless. And it is happening because we have one of the most chaotic and incompetent provincial governments we have seen in this province in decades. And the people of Alberta deserve caring, stable, competent leadership. The world around us is changing, and we need a strong voice at all the tables that are deliberating on that change on behalf of Albertans. We can't stick our fingers in our ear and our head in the sand and try to pretend that things aren't happening. That strategy sells out and hurts Alberta families, and they deserve better.
Tyson with CTV, and sorry again, following up on just transition. The feds have told us that this document was not necessarily a secret document. It had been out there, and maybe that's not due diligence on the part of the province in your mind to find this document. But these concerns that Premier Smith have, do you kind of see where she's coming from? Is it something that you maybe even agree with her? I know you don't agree with her on a lot of things, but is this something, these concerns that she's raising, is it something you agree with her on?
What I agree with is that this idea that the federal government and politicians in Ottawa will be debating an initiative in the House this spring that, by the admission of this document, stands to have significant disruption to a labor force consisting of hundreds of thousands of people primarily residing in Alberta. I agree that conversation should not be happening in the absence of Albertans on many fronts. Alberta citizens being more fully engaged at the front end, as well as the government of Alberta. But where I disagree with her is on everything that government has done up to this day, because you cannot just walk around, as I say, with your fingers stuck in your ear, humming inanely to yourself, pretending that the rest of the world doesn't exist. And that is effectively what these folks have been doing for months and years. And they, as I say, they've let down Albertans in the process.
You mentioned maybe not enough dialogue between Premier Smith and the federal government. We saw earlier this week, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in Saskatchewan, and he was blatantly asked, was Premier Scott Moe invited to that event? Didn't necessarily say yes or no, but is that come back to that alienation between the prairies and Ottawa, that that dialogue is just maybe not there, and that's maybe why Premier Smith hasn't seen this document up until last week?
Listen, I was premier for 4 years, and what I know from that experience is that when major decisions that have an impact on the people of this province are being made, it doesn't matter what political political sense is out there, what kind of narrative is out there. It is your job to be in the room and to stand up for your citizens. So and what we know is that this government, this UCP government, has focused entirely on conflict and their own internal chaos for 18 months. And so they just haven't done the job. And I know from my own experience that, that there's just no way you would see this scope of conversation going on with the Alberta government being clueless to it. It shouldn't be happening. I'm only here to speak about provincial politics and what is within the area of responsibility of provincial politicians. And on that front, I can tell you that this government has abdicated its responsibility.
Okay, go to questions on the line. First question goes to Audrey Neveau.
Behind me. Rachel, I need some clarity. Are you calling on the federal government to suspend the just legislation, just transition legislation, or to abandon it completely indefinitely?
I am calling on them to take whatever they have put together so far and just take it and basically get rid of it, because what we need is a plan that is developed with Albertans, fully at the table, fully aware of the scope of what it is that's being discussed. We've seen in the Auditor General's report pretty clear descriptions of how governments have failed to get this issue right up to now. So this idea that we should just sort of cross our fingers and hope that they've now suddenly figured out how to get it right, and that we can assume that they've done it without us in the room and without us even knowing the scope of it. I mean, nobody, doesn't matter left or right, doing their job as the leader of this province would make that assumption. It just, it doesn't make sense. And sometimes, you may have great intentions, but if you start out the wrong way, no matter how great your intentions may be, the product is fundamentally flawed from the start, and so you need to go back to the start.
Follow-up, Audrey?
Yes. So you're calling for the federal government to scrap this and also the 2030 greenhouse gas emissions reduction target for the oil and gas sector. Don't you alienating your base that cares about those issues?
Listen, maybe not sure. It's hard to say. Here's what I know. Here's what I've said throughout my career, and I think I may have said it already once, but I'll say it again. You cannot combat climate change by sacrificing the economy, and you cannot sacrifice the critically important obligation to combat climate change in a so-called service of the economy. You will fail at both. I believe that we have an obligation and the capacity to ambitiously and significantly reduce our emissions in the oil and gas sector. I believe that we can do it in a way that is very, very effective, and also serves as an economic growth opportunity. But it's a complicated needle to thread, and that's why we need a Made in Alberta plan, quite frankly. And we will not get there, and I've said this right from the very beginning, by coming up with emissions targets which are just not reachable. And so that is something that folks in Ottawa themselves, bureaucrats, have admitted that the current emissions cap is not practical. And so I think we can get to a practical emissions cap, and then I think we can get to net zero. I think we can do all these things, but we need to do it in a practical way. So I am absolutely committed to the importance of reducing our emissions significantly in this province. I am also committed to doing it in a way that protects jobs, grows opportunity, and ultimately grows jobs. And I think that path is there. It's, as I say, we just need to do the work to get there.
Okay, the next question goes to Catherine Bukowski.
Hi there, hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep.
Perfect. So actually I have one on-topic question.
Okay.
So I just want to understand what you're asking as the affordability minister is looking at post-secondary affordability, you're asking to spend the unspent student aid, put in a tuition cap, and expand eligibility for affordability payments to post-secondary students, is that correct?
Well, post-secondary students among others. So let's be clear. There are families all across this province who earn significantly less than $180,000 a year, who earn less than $100,000 a year, who earn less than, I don't know, $40,000 a year, I suspect. And those folks have tremendous affordability challenges that are confronting them, and they are being left out of this program. And so that is the point. We're talking about one group that is represented within that larger group that's been left out, and that's post-secondary students. And we're talking about all the ways in which the UCP has actually upped costs on those folks, in addition to leaving them out of these payments. But really, I mean, these payments, this is an incompetent plan developed again by a chaotic government that leaves out huge groups of Albertans who are suffering from this affordability crisis. And so our point here is that it needs to be better designed, and it needs to be focused on those people who are genuinely struggling to, keep frozen vegetables in their fridge, let alone fresh vegetables.
Did you have a follow-up, Catherine?
Yeah, off topic, also on the just transition. I've heard you talk a lot about how you need to balance the economy and the environment, but I haven't necessarily heard some specifics, like are you asking for a jobs guarantee from the federal government? Are you asking for is there a specific number for the funding that is going to be needed for training? What is a more realistic emissions cap?
Okay.
More details about what you think needs to be in this legislation.
Well, I'll start by saying, of course, that I'm not the premier, and so I don't have, of course, the benefit of tens of thousands of public servants who can advise us on the best path forward. I will say I don't even necessarily like the words balance, because it once again suggests that the two are pitted against each other. And I actually see action on climate change and economic growth as being necessarily hand in hand. Now, that being said, I don't have the exact number on the emissions cap. I think that there is room to make some very significant and ambitious progress by 2030 on the degree to which emissions come down. I don't have an exact number because I don't have access to the details around the path to get there and the investments that are required. But that is something that we do have to engage in, I think, in good faith, both because we need to reduce emissions for the good of the climate, and it is an opportunity as what I think we are in Alberta, which is the world's most progressive energy producer. And so we can do this, and we can turn it into a win. In terms of job numbers, what I want to see, basically, is I want to see jobs maintained, and then I want additional jobs added. New jobs added in the oil and gas sector, doing different kinds of things. Whether we're pivoting to more hydrogen, more bitumen beyond combustion, whether we're engaging in more opportunities for LNG export. Those kinds of things, all within the oil and gas sector, but very much focused on reducing emissions, or whether we're talking about other forms of energy, but similar levels of compensation, of course, for those folks that are hopefully going to move into that area, not from their current, but just move into it from, school, for instance. I'm not going to be able to get into particulars right now, but that's the model, and that's the overview, the high-level objectives that I think we should be pursuing, and I think it is very much within our grasp.
Okay, and that's all for today.
Thank you very much.